In the early years of our federation, Labor battled the perception that a bunch of former miners, labourers, farmhands, cabinet makers, watchmakers, fitters, tinsmiths, union activists and other alleged riffraff were not capable of forming a responsible government. Fisher's steady hand kept the Labor caucus, not always a compliant and amicable group, united and largely harmonious, certainly to those who viewed it from the outside. No Labor politician should pretend to you that every caucus is a bastion of peace and harmony, but the severity of the strains and tensions within Fisher's parliamentary party can be seen by the fact that it took just 11 months from Fisher's resignation for his successor, Billy Hughes, to rip the party asunder. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not know what the fortunes of the Labor Party would have been if there'd been no Andrew Fisher and Billy Hughes had won the ballot to succeed Chris Watson. It is possible, no doubt, that the steadily strengthening support for Labor's program for the idea of a Commonwealth government with an active role in building the nation and levelling the playing field might have swept Hughes into office. But, ladies and gentlemen, I doubt it. Andrew Fisher's patience, his persistence and his sensitivity provided sure and certain leadership as Labor made the leap from power brokers to power. That is Andrew Fisher's greatest legacy. It's not, of course, his only legacy. The Fisher government of 1910 followed up in its world-first majority with the most active legislative program that had yet been seen in the Commonwealth Parliament, passing 113 pieces of legislation. Much of the core of Australia's public policy consensus and the institutions of our Commonwealth were set out by Fisher's government. The Seat of Government Administration Act 1910, providing for the organisation to establish the national capital. The Commonwealth Bank Act 1911 provided for a national tradings and savings bank, and the Australian Notes Act transferred to the Commonwealth from private banks the authority to print paper money. The Commonwealth Electoral Act 1911 introduced compulsory enrolment for Commonwealth elections. Maternity Allowances Act 1912 granted European mothers £5 on the birth of a child. The Commonwealth Workmen's Compensation Act 1912 provided for compulsory insurance and compensation for federal and territory employees. Wattle became Australia's national flower. Legislation establishing both the Duntroon Military College and the Royal Australian Navy came into operation in 1911. Ladies and gentlemen, after losing the 1913 election, Andrew Fisher led Labor to victory again in 1914, becoming Prime Minister for the third time in a career that had taken him from the Crosshouse Mines to the highest electorate office in Australia. Only 5 Labor leaders have won an election from opposition. When Fisher did it, he was the first of any party in Australia, and he did it twice, in 1910 and after losing office in 1913, again in 1914. Ladies and gentlemen, like Chris Watson, Andrew Fisher is now too often only remembered as the answer to the odd quiz question, but the legacy he created through his endurance and persistence should have secured him a place in both Australia's history and in the Labor movement pantheon. His second government increased the number of people who participated in the democratic election of those who governed them, laid many of the foundations of the new Australian nation, and extended the responsibility of the government for the protection and care of those in need. Despite all the changes in the intervening 100 years, tonight we are all reminded again of the constancy of Labor's values and Labor's aims. Today, as then, Australia has a federal Labor government dedicated to strengthening our democracy, to nation building and to providing a helping hand for those in need. Led again by a hard-working Prime Minister from Queensland, carrying on our Labor traditions into the second Australian century, just as Andrew Fisher's government did in the first. Ladies and gentlemen, 100 years after the election of the first Labor Prime Minister from Australia, I am delighted to have the honour of introducing our current Labor Prime Minister, also from Queensland. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd.